Luffy was deeply moved. Luffy, who once thought that Bentham died in Impel Down, was full of gratitude and guilt towards Bentham. Now is not the time to be happy. We are not out of danger yet. When Bentham saw the man waving an iron fist and attacking them from the sky, he immediately turned into an elu, grabbed Luffy and ran away. After Ace escaped, he opened fire at full power. The raging fire immediately set the entire area on fire, blowing away all the attacking marines. When everyone in the Whitebeard pirates saw Ace being rescued, they all cheered. "My men, listen to my orders. Everyone evacuate Marineford." Seeing his son being rescued, Whitebeard ordered the evacuation without hesitation. Every extra minute he stayed here would cost his other sons their precious lives, and he couldn't afford any more delay. As long as Ace can leave here safely, the Whitebeard pirates will have won this unprecedented battle. But how could Sengoku let him have his wish? And he attacked Whitebeard himself. As the naval marshal, Sengoku is not only the most intelligent of the three armed forces, but his martial arts ability is also several points stronger than that of the admiral. When he was young, he grew up fighting with top powers like Roger, Whitebeard, and Golden Lion. Even though he is old now, he is not an easy person to deal with. Whitebeard, who was already at the end of his strength, had consumed a lot of physical strength when being surrounded by many Navy men. When he faced off against Sengoku at this time, the two men violent and domineering clashed, and Whitebeard was actually at a disadvantage for a while. When his sons saw their father surrounded by the Navy, they stopped and were reluctant to leave. Whitebeard was immediately anxious when he saw this. He forced Sengoku back with a powerful sword and shouted in a deep voice, "You and I will part here. Everyone must survive and return to the new world safely." "Dad, are you going to die here?" the sons cried out. Whitebeard stomped his foot heavily on the ground, hooked his left arm to the right. The muscles on his arm instantly expanded twice as much. His body turned half to the right, and a sharp and resolute cold light burst out from his eyes. "I am a remnant of the old era. In the new era, there is no ship that can carry me." Whitebeard roared and smashed his left fist into the air with all his strength. Boom, crack, 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 crack. The air cracked again, and the immense explosive force instantly spread to the entire Marineford. The entire island suddenly shook, and the surrounding sea was like boiling water, with huge waves rolling. An insurmountable gap appeared on the ground between Whitebeard and his sons, completely separating them. After Whitebeard delivered this punch, his strength seemed to be drained, and his tall body hunched over. Seeing this, the sons started crying loudly and were even more reluctant to leave, because that was their father. "Dad, we won't abandon Dad. Let's go home together." Whitebeard lowered his head with a look of reluctance. He also wanted to leave here, but someone had to hold up the sky for these children, and that person could only be him, an old man who already had one foot in the coffin. "You disobeyed the captain orders. Get out of here, you stupid guys. Take advantage of now. Whitebeard is already dying." The sharp-eyed Marines have already noticed that Whitebeard is exhausted, and they shouted to their companions to launch an attack on Whitebeard together. Sengoku glanced at Akainu, who was chasing after Fire Fist Ace, and attacked Whitebeard again, saying fiercely, "Whitebeard, Fire Fist Ace, none of you can escape today." This time, Whitebeard could only barely hold on under his fierce attack. Finally, the pirates faced the reality and began to evacuate with tears in their eyes and great sorrow. Crocodile took the time to look at the evacuation of Whitebeard and the other pirates, then glanced at the cloudy sky, and used the same force to force the two admirals back. At this time, each of the three people had several knife wounds on their bodies, and blood was flowing out. "It looks like the first half of this war is over. From now on, we will take over the rest of the time," Crocodile said loudly. He pushed his coat back and tore off his blood-stained shirt. He wiped the hideous knife marks on his body with his left hand, and there was no trace of scar on his body anymore. "What kind of weird ability is this? All the wounds on our bodies have disappeared." Aokiji and Kizaru looked extremely ugly at this time. From this perspective, the two men fought each other desperately, but in the end, the other party just lost some physical strength. What does this guy mean? Sengoku, who had been suppressing Whitebeard, was not under much pressure and had enough free time to observe the battle situation on Crocodile's side. But after hearing what Crocodile said, even though I didn't know what it meant, I had a bad feeling in my heart. The person who just rescued Ace and can change his appearance is definitely the same person who caused the riot in Impel Down. Judging from the feeling of the fight just now, that person's strength is not enough to change the situation of the battle. Could it be that defeat Crocodile has made other backup plans? Sengoku brain worked frantically, and he carefully searched for other masters who were related to defeat Crocodile. At this moment, a muffled rumbling sound was faintly heard from the dark clouds. Sengoku suddenly raised his head, and his pupils shrank as he looked towards the sky. No way, Thor, please show up. Crocodile opened his lips slightly and uttered 5 simple words in a calm tone. Thousands of meters in the air, Enelo stood on the side of the Ark Proverbs, holding the golden scepter in his hand and laughing crazily. Ha 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 ha. Is it finally my turn to perform? I have been planning this wanlay for a long time, and it will definitely satisfy everyone. The golden scepter struck the drum behind it one by one, and a beam of lightning rushed towards the dark clouds, as if to guide and aim at the target below. 10,000 thunders. Enel said these 2 words coldly, like a god high above sentencing a mortal from the lower world to death. In an instant, countless violent lightning pillars that were too big to be embraced by arms poured down towards Marienford. And 1,000 meters above the Ark Proverbs, there is a huge thunderball with a radius of more than hundreds of meters, floating in the sky, constantly emitting rumbling thunder. Everyone looked up at the sky, not understanding what was happening. The blue electric light illuminated the entire gloomy sky, so bright that people could not even open their eyes. A large number of naval soldiers were struck by lightning without any preparation and fell down with their bodies charred. Some people noticed that lightning was striking towards them and wanted to dodge, but how could they match the speed of lightning before they could even move? They were struck by it. Only senior generals with outstanding observation hockey can escape from the attack of lightning. For a moment, screams resounded throughout Marienford. What on earth is going on with this sudden thunder and lightning? Why did lightning suddenly attack the Navy? Is there any other person with special abilities in the sky? Perhaps I have done too many evil things and was punished by God. Ordinary soldiers have no way of dodging or blocking this kind of attack. They can only watch themselves and their companions being electrocuted to death. This is simply a massacre against the Navy. Crocodile, stop now! Sengoku shouted in agony as he watched his soldiers being slaughtered crazily without any resistance. There will always be casualties in war, Sengoku. Crocodile's cold and ruthless voice made Sengoku even more furious. You really deserve to die, Sengoku roared in rage, but at this time he was entangled by Whitebeard and could not be rescued. We must capture Crocodile as soon as possible to stop the lightning. Otherwise the casualties of the Navy will be unimaginable, Aokiji said in a cold voice with an ugly expression. Kizaru rushed towards Crocodile without saying a word. However, Crocodile was prepared, and this time he used more than just brute force to chop. Anubis' sword was covered with golden light and black and red lightning, and he struck Kizaru with a simple blow. The Kusanagi sword in Kizaru's hand shattered instantly, and a horrible wound was immediately left on his chest. He flew backwards with blood spurting out. This guy actually possessed this kind of power. Aokiji's heart sank to the bottom when he saw this. The attack method of Conqueror Hockey Entanglement consumes a lot of physical strength. Because of his age and physical strength, Whitebeard does not dare to easily use this attack method that can cause huge damage. But Crocodile is now at his peak in all aspects and has no such concerns at all. Except for Sengoku and Garp, no one in the Navy has such strength. While he was thinking, a cold voice sounded in his ears. Being distracted on the battlefield is a fatal mistake. Aokiji was so frightened that he didn't even notice when Crocodile came in front of him. He quickly built an ice wall around him to block it. However, the ice wall, which was as hard as steel, was like paper in front of the opponent. It was unable to even block it and chopped him off. What on earth is going on? How can Crocodile be so powerful that the Admiral of the Navy, representing the highest combat power of the Navy. One sword kills one general. Is the Navy going to lose? I don't believe it. It must be fake. The situation on the battlefield of Marineford unexpectedly changed in less than a minute, surprising all those who had optimistic expectations for the Navy. Thank you so much, Sengoku. You have taken great pains to gather all of the Navy most elite forces together, so I don't have to go to each base one by one. Crocodile slowly landed on the ground and said to Sengoku in a grim tone, "You bastard!" Sengoku's eyes were red with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Erosion reincarnation without any other nonsense. Crocodile half knelt on one knee, pressed his left hand on the ground, and said. The ground beneath his feet began to crack and turn into sand on a large scale in the blink of an eye. One after another, the city towers and buildings began to collapse. Moreover, the scope of desertification is rapidly expanding to the entire Marineford. This island, which has been used as the Navy headquarters for thousands of years, is turning into a desert. However, that was not all. The naval soldiers who had their feet on the ground were horrified to find that the sand beneath their feet was tightly grasping their feet and dragging them deeper into the desert. Help! I can't move my feet. Someone come and save me. I am about to be buried. Quicksand, get on the bay wall. Deadly lightning struck continuously, and the solid ground beneath 1 feet quickly turned into deadly quicksand. The naval soldiers on this side of the execution platform were suddenly in a desperate situation. Garp, if you don't take action, are you going to watch all your soldiers die or get injured? Sengoku really hated this old guy Garp now, and roared at him with a sense of disappointment. In fact, this cannot be blamed on Garp. First, all his thoughts today are on his 2 grandsons. Furthermore, the changes that occurred in such a short period of time made everyone unprepared mentally. Who could have thought that Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea who was not taken seriously by the other powerful men, would have such terrifying strength and means? Even when he was facing 2 naval admirals at the same time at the beginning, he was still trying his best to hide his strength. This person has taken scheming and forbearance to the extreme. This is the most ferocious and insidious predator lurking in the desert, the sand crocodile. Once he sets his sights on his prey, he will either not attack or not, but once he does, he will strangle the prey with a thunderous attack and then swallow it into his stomach. Stop it! Garp finally came to his senses at this time, waving his black iron fist and rushing towards Crocodile with anger on his face. Crocodile didn't dare to be careless, as he still remembered vividly how this old man beat him up in Alabasta. This old man was a real monster whose strength was not inferior to Whitebeard. When Crocodile faced him, he was completely unprepared and had a huge weakness in strength. He couldn't even break through the opponent's defense. He could only fight desperately in the desert, his absolute home ground. But now, everything is different. Crocodile physique, physical strength, power, and domineering have all reached new heights. Coupled with the blessing of the supreme sword Anubis, even the shortcoming of the sand fruit insufficient damage is fully compensated. What reason does he have to fear the strongest navy? Of course I will stop, but not now. Crocodile once again used the sword technique that sent the 2 generals flying, and crashed directly into Garp Iron Fist. The 2 powerful domineering oars collided violently, and black and red lightning filled the space around the 2 people. If Enel had not forcibly controlled the dark clouds filled with thunder and lightning, they would probably have been broken apart by the momentum of the 2 men. Crocodile, I really shouldn't have shown mercy to you, Garp said harshly. His own grandson was saved, but the tragic deaths of the soldiers before his eyes made his eyes moist. All this was closely related to him. Garp, why don't you become an admiral? Is it just because you don't want to be a dog for the celestial dragons, or is there another hidden story? Crocodile and Garp had fierce clashes again and again, and Crocodile did not forget to ask each other soul-searching questions. If you don't want to be the boss, then you don't want to be the boss. Why are there so many reasons? Garp argued loudly and forcefully, sweat oozing from his forehead. Crocodile question was a real pain in the ass for him. He knew the answer very well, but he just couldn't say it out loud. You should be very clear about how many crimes the celestial dragons, the world government, and the Navy have committed, right? Even though he possesses such a powerful force, he only captures those weak pirates and turns a blind eye to the crimes that really touch the root of the problem. Is this what a naval hero is? Is this the justice you, Garp, uphold? Don't you feel ashamed? On the other side of the battlefield, Ace, who was originally running away, was finally angered by Akainu words. He turned back and swung his angry fist at Akainu. However, the gap in strength cannot be made up by anger alone. In the setting, the magma fruit is already a higher level fruit than the flame fruit, and has a strong suppressive effect on it. In addition, there is an insurmountable gap between Ace's own strength and Akainu. With just one punch, Akainu magma power that could burn through everything penetrated into Ace's arm and seriously injured him. With the severe burning and pain, Ace fell to his knees in pain. Seeing that Ace was unable to resist, Akainu did not pursue him, but instead turned his attention to Luffy, who was also exhausted. The revolutionary, the world's most vicious criminal, the son of Monkey D. Dragon, if he were killed, it would also be an exciting and huge victory for the Navy. Even though he is the grandson of the Navy hero Garp, Akainu will not show any mercy. In his eyes, there is only justice. Helldog Akainu's right arm turned into rolling magma and he leaped towards Luffy in one step. The rubber fruit is most afraid of fire and high temperature. If Luffy is hit by a Akainu punch, he will definitely die. In order to protect his brother, Ace risked his life to stand in front of Luffy, trying to use his body to block a Akainu attack. In the original work, the tragedy of Ace being pierced through the chest by a Akainu and then dying tragically is about to be staged again. But at this critical moment, a majestic figure several times taller than Ace appeared between Akainu and Ace as if teleporting. Pop! A sound like a bubble bursting was heard. The Admiral Akainu, who rushed over with great momentum and launched a thundering attack on the Straw Hat Boy, was actually sent flying backwards. Bartholomew Bear, what on earth is going on? Is there something wrong with his program? As Akainu was flying backwards, he saw the person who attacked him and 3 huge question marks appeared in his mind. Luffy was also shocked. His stubborn mind couldn't figure out why the man who had just knocked him and his friends away a few days ago suddenly came to his rescue today. Hasn't Mr. Kume already undergone the final transformation? How could he suddenly lose control? Sentomaru also looked incredulous. At this time, Kizaru and Aokiji, who were chopped away by Crocodile, also crawled out from the ruins. Aokiji waved his hand with a gloomy face and used his ability to directly freeze the huge knife scar on his chest. Kizaru was more ruthless. He took off his clothes directly, revealing his muscular upper body and hideous knife marks. He lowered his head to look at his chest, and the skin on both sides of the knife scar began to slowly move and close. Then he shot a thin laser from his fingertips towards the wound, trying to weld it directly. The power of life restoration and fruit ability is fully reflected in him. But when he treated his wound and just looked up, he saw Akainu being flung away by Bear. Yellow Monkey opened his mouth, and for the first time, an incredible expression appeared on his face. This joke is not funny at all. As the Supreme Commander of the Navy Scientific Forces, he knew the progress of the Tyrant Bear transformation best. Under normal circumstances, Bear has now completely lost his self-awareness and personality, and can only follow the orders given by Vegapunk, the 5 elders and him. Such a bizarre scene should never happen. I am sorry about what happened last time. Kuma turned around and gave Luffy an apologetic look, speaking in a gentle tone. What the hell is going on? Luffy felt as if half of his brain cells were burned to death in an instant. Doragu, he an old friend of mine, the bear explained. Where are my friends? Where were they sent? Are they all okay? Luffy suddenly remembered the thing he cared about most, which was the whereabouts of his friends, and asked hurriedly and anxiously. They need real experience and growth before they can help you. I just sent them to where they were supposed to go. It was not until then that Luffy finally understood the other party's true intentions, and realized that if Kuma had not sent them away at that time, someone would not have been able to escape the clutches of Kizaru and the pacifists. Thank you. Luffy knelt on the ground with full respect and kowtowed deeply to the bear. Leave. This is no longer a place for you to stay, the bear said, and stretched out his heavy bare paw and slapped Ace. "See you again if we are lucky." Then he slapped Luffy again. "Bartholomew Kuma, it turns out you are not unconscious." Seeing his two must-kill targets being killed by Kuma, Akainu was so angry that he was shaking. "I regret it," Kuma said calmly. "In that case, there is no need for your relatives to exist." Akainu threatened viciously. "After today, this problem will no longer be a problem," Kuma said nonchalantly. "Let's see if you can survive today first." Akainu rushed over with a ferocious roar. The magma that can burn through everything and the bear paw that can bounce off everything collided violently. Bentham can be said to be the busiest person today. After causing a big fuss in Impel Prison, he rushed to the battlefield without stopping. He had just taken a break when he received a series of tasks including stealing Den Den Mushi, setting up live broadcast cameras, and rescuing Ace the Fire Fist. Having just sent the Straw Hat Boy out of the danger zone, Bentham discovered that the Navy was frantically searching for and destroying the live broadcast camera. This is the highest priority task assigned by the boss. Other things can be put aside for the time being, but the live broadcast must continue. Even if there is only one Den Den Mushi left, the whole world must see the true face of this war. Seeing that a large number of Navy were running towards the last Den Den Mushi he placed, Bentham immediately turned into a stream of light and went to protect it. "Marine crew, why don't you dare let the world see this war? Are you afraid that they will see your miserable failure?" Bentham pointed at the large group of Navy crew in front of him and asked. "Don't waste time talking to him. Kill him and destroy the Den Den Mushi." Lieutenant General pointed a knife at Bentham and said fiercely. Upon hearing this, the Navy immediately rushed forward and wanted to cut Bentham into pieces with their swords. "Very well, since you insist on doing so, don't blame me for being cruel," Bentham said with a cruel look on his face. When he saw this, he slapped his face with his right hand, and his body suddenly swelled up. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a terrifying giant. He has become Magellan, the prison warden of Impel Down. When the Navy saw Bentham's appearance, they all stopped in their tracks with fear on their faces. "What are you afraid of? He is just a show-off. Don't be scared by his appearance. Keep attacking." The Vice Admiral obviously didn't know that once Bentham turned into someone, he would have the corresponding abilities of the other person, and he encouraged the Navy to continue attacking. After a moment hesitation, the sailors rushed towards Bentham. "Poison dragon!" Bentham shouted in a deep voice. Large amounts of purple mucus condensed from every corner of the body. Several giant dragons made entirely of purple sticky venom leaped out of his body and pounced on the Navy. "No, I don't agree. There are indeed some unreasonable aspects of the Navy. However, there are a large number of children who truly have justice in their hearts and join the Navy to protect ordinary people from pirates. They are all innocent," Garp shouted angrily during the desperate fight with Crocodile. "Whether it pirates or celestial dragons, none of them should exist. This world is rotten from the root. If we don't bear the pain and remove it, it will continue to rot, and even get worse." Compared with the future of hundreds of millions of ordinary people, the lives of these sailors are nothing. If their lives can bring peace back to this world, everything will be worth it to establish an order. Someone always has to make sacrifices. Crocodile was unmoved by Garp's words, and slashed at the opponent with the blade in his hand without mercy, causing large sparks to fly when it collided with Garp's black iron fist. Garp also knew in his heart that there was nothing wrong with what the other party said, but the identities and positions of both parties meant that they were destined to not be able to hold back on Crocodile. "I won't let you go on unless you kill me," Garp said with sweat on his face, gritting his teeth. He had never fought such a physically and mentally exhausting battle in his life. He also hopes that scum like the celestial dragons will be eliminated, otherwise he would not have repeatedly refused to be promoted to Admiral of the Navy and serve as a dog for these trash. But he also didn't want to see the Marines who had been with him day and night being slaughtered. However, there are not so many things in the world that can have the best of both worlds. "Then I will grant your wish." "Annihilation!" Crocodile shouted fiercely. Dozens of slashes emitting gray-white light shot towards Garp. In response to this attack, Garp didn't think much and just swung his fist to break these blows one by one. But with such intensive attacks, There will always be one fish that slips through the net. There was a small cut on Carp's left upper arm. At first he didn't care about this minor injury, but his expression suddenly changed in an instant. He felt a strange force entering into the wound and corroding his flesh. He quickly leaped back, creating a safe distance between himself and Crocodile. "What the hell is this?" Cap frowned as he looked at the wound that was constantly expanding and turning black, turning his muscles into powder. He had a very bad premonition. If you don't find a way to get rid of it, it won't be long before your entire arm, or even your entire person, disappears. He tried to wrap the wound with his hockey, but it was completely useless. "It's time to make a decision, Cap. Should we endure the pain and gain a new life, or turn a blind eye until it turns to ashes?" Crocodile said meaningfully. Garp glared at Crocodile fiercely. "You can only defeat me in such a despicable way." Then he picked up a saber from the ground and slashed his arm hard. A large piece of bloody muscle immediately fell to the ground. Even an old warrior as tough as Garp could not bear the pain of cutting flesh and cried out in pain. Aokiji and Kizaru, who had just treated their wounds, saw that the Navy hero not only failed to defeat Crocodile, but was seriously injured themselves, so they hurried to rescue him. "Kyuzen, freeze my wound quickly." Seeing the reinforcements coming, Garp hurriedly covered his miserable arm and said with gritted teeth, "Life return can prevent the wound from bleeding heavily, but it is not a panacea. If his injury is not treated, he will easily suffer hemorrhage in a fierce battle." "Borsalino, be careful of this guy attack, don't get hurt," Garp warned loudly. Upon hearing this, Kizaru immediately focused his attention and carefully responded to Crocodile's increasingly fierce attack. After Aokiji treated Garp's wounds, he immediately joined the battle. Garp, who could only move one arm, followed closely in his footsteps. The three strongest fighters of the Navy besieged Crocodile together. His situation suddenly became critical and he was hit by several attacks in succession. Afterwards, Garp threw an extremely violent punch to the ground, creating a huge hole in the already desertified ground. Seeing this, Kizaru and Aokiji could not miss the opportunity to finish off Crocodile in the pit. They fired lasers and ice spears at him without mercy, hoping to end the battle in one fell swoop. The thick smoke gradually dissipated, and the sand pit that Crocodile had just fallen into expanded several times under the fierce bombardment of the two men, and the bottom of the pit was completely frozen. "This should be solved now, right?" Aokiji said as he exhaled a breath of cold air. "Isn't this obvious?" Kizaru wiped the sweat from his forehead and said in a relaxed tone. Unlike the two generals, Garp, who was standing by the sand pit, still had a serious expression on his face and did not take it lightly at all. "You know, the ground beneath their feet is now a desert. The last time he captured Crocodile, he had forced him into a desperate situation, but still failed to defeat him completely. It was for this reason. Could it be that Crocodile was able to turn the entire Marineford into sand in order to create another home for himself?" Garp suddenly had a bad feeling. Help, it hurts so much, I am going to die at this moment." Screams suddenly rang out near a bay wall on the far right side of the fortress. The three of them looked closely and found that the prison warden Magellan, who was supposed to be an impel down, was releasing venom at a large number of naval soldiers there. Several poisonous dragons formed by accumulated purple venom were dancing wildly in the crowd, and no one could hinder them even a little bit. How could Magellan appear here? Marshal Sengoku, who was still fighting with Whitebeard, also saw this scene and felt a little unbelievable. "He is the one who can change his image." Sengoku suddenly came to his senses and reminded loudly. "These bastards!" When Garp saw this scene, his eyes were bloodshot and his heart felt like it was pierced by thousands of swords. It hurt so much that he couldn't breathe. Hurry up and find a way to stop him. For the first time in his life, the naval hero felt powerless and could only shout anxiously to his two juniors. As Navy soldiers, how could they not know how terrifying Magellan's destructive power was? Only a handful of people in the entire battlefield can cope with the opponent ability. Even if it was him, there would be nothing he could do if he encountered it. Not to mention those ordinary Navy soldiers. If there is no antidote, They will die slowly in pain if they are exposed to the poison. Leave it to me. Aokiji was extremely angry at this time. He stepped on the moon step and flew towards Magellan position at a high speed. The expression on his face was just like his ability, which was icy cold, frozen time capsule before it could get close. Aokiji shot several small ice balls at the poisonous dragon released by Bentham, moving forward at a speed several times faster than him. As soon as the ice ball made contact, the poisonous dragon immediately began to freeze, allowing the soldiers in the rear to escape. But the sailors who had been poisoned before were not so lucky. They rolled on the ground in pain, and some even lost their voice and passed out. Bentham saw that the poisonous dragon was perfectly restrained by the admiral who came to rescue him, and he immediately shouted, "The admiral is here." I am so scared, but anyone with a discerning eye could see that there was actually no panic expression on his face. "Go to hell, you clown," Aokiji cursed viciously. He stretched out his hand and condensed the ice pheasant beak again, and rushed towards Bentham. Bentham did not dare to be careless. A red light flashed in his eyes, and his body, which was previously wrapped in purple venom, instantly turned scarlet blood red. The whole person was like a messenger crawling out of the blood sea of hell. Large amounts of blood-colored venom continuously gushed out of his body and flowed to the ground, and even more terrifying poisonous gas also spread around. Bentham waved his hand, and countless scarlet venoms rushed towards Aokiji, violent pheasant beak like huge waves. The pheasant exploded instantly after hitting the venom, freezing the venom again. However, unexpectedly, the originally white ice was soon stained with a hint of red, and emitted a faint red mist. The ice that could freeze everything was actually being corroded and melted by the venom. "Can't you freeze?" Aokiji expression became more serious. "Everyone, evacuate his area immediately." Aokiji stared at Bentham, whose body was constantly rising and oozing scarlet venom, and loudly ordered the surrounding navy to evacuate quickly. He knew clearly that the situation in the next battle would probably be very difficult to control. It a pity that those marines who were poisoned before may never be able to receive treatment. This man must be killed. Aokiji jumped high into the air and swore secretly in his heart. Ice spears as thick as forearms began to gather around him, aiming directly at the scarlet poisonous monster in the distance that was now dozens of meters tall. "Run, Magellan is beating me up. The farther away from here the better." That Magellan most powerful move. "Don't get touched by that venom. Even a fingertip-sized amount can kill an adult." This is the poison giant soldier. When the navy saw this giant monster, they immediately fled in panic. People outside may not know this, but they are well aware of Magellan cruelty. "Let me see. Which one is more poisonous, your venom, or my ice, which freezes faster and more solid?" Aokiji said. Then he jumped down from the sky with hundreds of ice spears that had just condensed, and stabbed at the venom giant below. After turning into this form, Bentham was unable to speak, and a terrifying roar like a giant beast came out of his mouth. Countless scarlet venoms around his body swept towards Aokiji in the air like a huge wave and torrent. Kyuzen is probably the best choice to deal with that kind of ability. Garp finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the rest of the navy had safely evacuated from there under the cover of Aokiji. Perhaps it was because he saw that his sons could finally evacuate safely that Whitebeard even recovered some of his physical strength. Facing the siege of Navy Marshal Sengoku and a group of naval forces, it regained its strong combat effectiveness. Every time he swung the naginata in his hand, he could sweep away a large number of naval elites. He is worthy of being the strongest man in the world. Even after suffering such serious injuries, he can still be so majestic. Kizaru couldn't help but marvel. He raised his right hand, glanced at Whitebeard carefully, and a dazzling yellow light condensed at the tip of his index finger. "I wonder if you can still be so powerful using only one leg," Kizaru said sinisterly, and a laser instantly burst out from his fingertips and shot towards the unsuspecting Whitebeard. Whitebeard was still concentrating on fighting the enemy in front of him and didn't notice the beam of light coming towards him at all, and his left calf was immediately shot through. Even though he had a monstrous physique and his limbs were severely injured, He could not hold on and fell to one knee on the ground. Seeing such a great opportunity, the Navy officers could not bear to let it go, and rushed forward like a pack of wolves. Dad, stand up!" The pirates of the Whitebeard pirates who had not yet evacuated shouted in despair with tears in their eyes. They knew deeply that even Whitebeard, who had suffered so many fatal injuries, had finally reached a moment of life and death. Arrows to capture prisoners. Just as swords and axes were about to strike, a cold female voice rang out, and countless pink arrows accurately hit the Navy, who took advantage of the opportunity, turning them into stone one after another. "Boa Hancock, are you going to stand on that guy's side too?" Sengoku asked angrily, pointing at the Empress with a frosty face. "If you dare to hurt Mr. Crook, you will be my sworn enemy," the Empress replied coldly. The Empress, who had just been fighting with the rest of the Navy, saw Crocodile being besieged by the three major forces and in danger, and she rushed to rescue him anxiously. But when they got there, they found that the big pit that Crocodile had fallen into before was completely frozen. So she quickly turned her gun around and attacked the Navy men who were besieging Whitebeard. After all, in her eyes, the people that Crocodile wants to help are naturally her allies, so there is no reason not to save them. "Hey, what is that?" A huge shadow appeared behind the headquarters fortress. More than that, who are the group of people that appeared above the execution platform while the two sides were still in a tense standoff? The naval soldiers not far away were surprised to find a group of suspicious people appearing behind them. "Did you finally notice, thief? Ha 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 ha. It seems like I came at just the right time." In the gradually dissipating smoke and dust, a group of tall and terrifying-looking people slowly appeared. Each of them is an ultimate criminal whose existence is hidden because they are too cruel. Such a huge figure, it can't be anyone else. He is the huge battleship, San Juan Wolf Pablo Pizarro, the king of evil Buckschote, the drunkard moon hunter, Katharina Teapon, and the former warden of Impel Down, Rainstream. At the Blackbeard pirates, the Navy, who recognized this group of people, said the identities of these people one by one in a voice full of fear. "How on earth did you appear here?" Sengoku was so upset when he saw this group of people coming. Blackbeard arrival in Marineford with this group of terrifying murderers is bound to add more variables to the already tense battle situation. The Navy will definitely be the one that suffers the most serious damage. "You bastard!" Whitebeard stared at the grinning man and cursed in a deep voice with hatred in his eyes. It was this hideous guy in front of him who forced him and his family into a dead end from which there was no turning back. "Long time no see. I can see you one last time before you die." Dad. Blackbeard looked at Whitebeard, extremely embarrassed appearance, and couldn't help but laugh even more wildly. Teach. Whitebeard looked at the other party, extremely sinister and vicious face, and suddenly stood up in anger, and punched the air with hatred. After sweeping away all the Navy along the way, the violent shockwave exploded under the city wall where Blackbeard and his men were, smashing the entire building into pieces and stirring up countless smoke and dust. "You really don't care about friendship? Well, it seems impossible to show mercy." Blackbeard lifted the huge stone slab that was pressing him down, shook off the dust on his head, and said jokingly, "You are the only one who is unworthy of being my son, Tiki. You violated the only iron rule on my ship and killed your companions, the last wish of Captain Thatch of the 4th Division. Let me kill you, this bastard, and let him rest in peace." Whitebeard raised his naginata and pointed it at Blackbeard, saying viciously, "It won't be a pleasant experience to clean up the mess in your current state, Whitebeard." At this moment, a stream of sand slowly emerged from the sand a few steps away from Whitebeard, then condensed into a human shape and spoke in a light tone. "Mr. Croc, I am so glad you are okay," the Empress said excitedly. K. Crocodile, you were clearly not." When Teach saw Crocodile suddenly appear, his face was immediately filled with fear. He and his gang of villains had actually arrived in Marineford a long time ago. It was because of the existence of the murderous Crocodile that he dared not reveal his whereabouts and hid in a dark corner, observing the situation on the battlefield and waiting for the opportunity. Seeing that it took the two admirals and the hero Garp to defeat and suppress Crocodile, He finally dared to show his whereabouts and prepared to implement his sinister plan. However, reality is often so cruel. The sand crocodile, which had been bombarded and frozen, reappeared in front of him unscathed. Being suspicious by nature, he even suspected that the previous attack on the other party was intentional in order to catch this big fish early. Even if that the case, it's easy to take his life. "This is my family affair, you don't have to interfere." Whitebeard stared at Blackbeard and said indifferently, "I like to see people beating dogs more brutally. Now we are allies after all. Providing you with some treatment and restoring some of your strength does not count as interference, right?" Crocodile looked at Blackbeard and said maliciously. Whitebeard looked down at the two scary holes on his body and nodded obediently. "Okay." After getting permission, Crocodile reached out and pressed his hand on Whitebeard's chest, then grinned at Blackbeard and the surrounding navy, and said mysteriously, "Next, it's time to witness a miracle." A pink light appeared in Crocodile palm, and then the pink light completely enveloped Whitebeard, as everyone looked on in disbelief. The horrific wounds on Whitebeard's body were healing rapidly. Not only that, black whiskers actually grew in Whitebeard, originally Whitebeard, and even his skin became tighter, and the whole person seemed to have instantly become 10 years younger. Whitebeard looked at his body in shock, and clearly felt the power that once existed in his body that could overturn mountains. Even many of his hidden illnesses had disappeared. "We are back. We are all back," Whitebeard said foolishly. Then he suddenly laughed out loud, looking up to the sky. "Gula la 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 la, I am back. My strength is back, you little crocodile kid. You really can keep surprising me." Gulala. The laughter contained the powerful impact of the tremor fruit, and for a moment, it caused Marineford to shake again. How is this possible?" At this moment, both Blackbeard and his gang and the navy were struggling to maintain their balance, and their shocked mouths seemed like they could fit a fist in. "Crocodile, he actually healed Whitebeard injuries." An officer let out a desperate wail. Not to mention the ordinary navy, even the Navy Marshal Sengoku felt extremely desperate at this moment. From the beginning of this war, they paid a huge price and sacrificed many precious lives of the Navy before they exhausted Whitebeard to the point where he was seriously injured and unable to fight again. But the results of this battle, accumulated with blood, completely changed in just a few breaths. The strongest man in the world with full combat power will undoubtedly completely change the situation in the next war. All this is because of Crocodile, this insidious and cunning guy. How many cards does he still have to reveal for the first time? Sengoku felt that the Navy would be defeated in the end in this war that he had planned. Let's end this. Are you ready to go to hell?" Whitebeard pointed his naginata at Blackbeard again and said in a grim tone. Seeing that the situation had come to this, Blackbeard had no choice but to fight to the death. His body shook, and countless inky black mists suddenly dissipated from his body. He bent down and pressed his hand on the ground, and the endless black fog began to spread to the entire ground, trapping Whitebeard in it. Whitebeard didn't understand the other party actions, but he was not afraid at all. He stood openly above the black mist emitted by Blackbeard. "This is the devil fruit I got after killing Thatch. The strongest power, the dark fruit, just you can taste its power," Blackbeard said with a grim smile. Whitebeard narrowed his eyes and smashed towards Blackbeard with his fist emitting white light. Blackbeard was not to be outdone, and he rushed forward with his palm filled with black light. As his fists collided, Whitebeard was surprised to find that the ability of his tremor fruit had disappeared without a trace. "It useless. All devil fruit abilities are ineffective against the dark fruit." Blackbeard grabbed Whitebeard's arm smugly. Whitebeard threw his naginata into the air in disbelief and punched again with his other hand, but the effect was the same. Blackbeard seized the opportunity while the other party was stunned and punched Whitebeard on the chin, knocking him high into the air. Then he grabbed Whitebeard's arm and exerted force, then kicked him hard again. However, the current Whitebeard is not the seriously injured and dying old man just now. Such an attack is only a little painful to him. However, within this very short period of time, he had figured out the general purpose of Blackbeard fruit ability. He, Whitebeard, is not the kind of weakling who is powerless without the devil fruit. He is the strongest man in the world, Edward Newgate. He caught the flying Naginata in his hand and said cruelly, "Die." Then he swung his knife at the stunned Blackbeard. Blackbeard screamed and was directly cut away by this purely physical attack. A hideous knife mark appeared on his body, running through his entire chest. Whitebeard broke free from the restraints of the dark fruit and walked towards Blackbeard with a gloomy face. Boom 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 boom. Every step of his heavy footsteps seemed to be stepping on Blackbeard's heart, making the other party feel terrified. "I was wrong, Dad. Please let me go. I am your son, Dad," Blackbeard begged with a fearful face. Whitebeard said nothing, but without the slightest hesitation, he covered Blackbeard's ugly face with his large hand like a palm leaf fan. "Save me!" Blackbeard shouted to the crew for help. Boom! Whitebeard didn't give him any chance to breathe. He directly grabbed Blackbeard's head and activated the ability of the tremor fruit. Boom! The earth and mountains in Marineford began to shake again. How could the crew members of the Blackbeard pirates watch their captain being killed so easily? So they rushed forward in a swarm. However, apart from a few old crew members who sincerely wanted to rescue Blackbeard, the other villains who had newly joined the Blackbeard pirates mostly just wanted to kill Whitebeard and become famous. However, although Whitebeard's condition at this moment is still far from his peak, not just anyone can get close to him. The only thought in his mind now was to kill the abominable bastard in front of him. Facing the Blackbeard and his gang who were rushing towards him with great momentum, he didn't even raise his head. Instead, he used his Naginata, which was powered by the power of the tremor fruit, to sweep away the enemy with one strike. The pirates were so shocked that they vomited blood and flew backwards. "Dad, spare me!" After Blackbeard was hit in the head, his consciousness became blurred. He forced himself to reach out and grab Whitebeard's trouser leg, begging intermittently. "You are not worthy to call me that," Whitebeard said in a deep voice with a cold expression. He turned the Naginata in his hand over, and stabbed it down into Blackbeard's chest with the blade pointed downward. Ding! A bullet hit the blade accurately. It was Vanoka, the sniper of the Blackbeard pirates, who tried to buy time for Blackbeard by deflecting Whitebeard's Naginata. However, the power contained in Whitebeard's hateful sword was so enormous that the bullet hitting the blade only caused it to deviate slightly at an angle and had no further effect. The broad blade of the Naginata pierced straight into Blackbeard's body without any surprise. Blackbeard's eyes widened and he made a ho-ho-ho sound from his mouth, as if he could not accept that his path to becoming a king would end here. "With such fatal injuries, I am afraid no one in this world has a chance of surviving." Whitebeard pulled out the knife expressionlessly, shook off the bright red blood on it, and then raised the knife with his arm. "Sachi, did you see that, Dad? I have avenged you!" Whitebeard roared to the sky to express his grief for his deceased son. "Dad!" the white pirates shouted loudly with tears in their eyes. How could they not be excited that their father was able to kill the culprit who plotted and betrayed and dragged the entire Whitebeard pirates into a bloody war single coup? "You hit me so hard just now, but what even more hateful is that brat Sikaski. Not only did he sow discord between me and my sons, he almost took my life. It's unforgivable." Whitebeard turned around and looked at the red figure at the other end of the battlefield. Okainu was so furious at this moment. He had never thought that these 7 warlords of the sea, whom he had never taken seriously before, could cause him so much trouble, especially the man in front of him named Kuma. This guy's only purpose seemed to be to entangle him tightly and not to fight him head-on at all. No matter what attack method he uses, the opponent can easily deflect his attack to another place. Whenever he wanted to move to another battlefield, this guy would appear in front of him as if teleporting. Although the opponent could not cause any harm to him, the flying magma did accidentally injure quite a few Navy personnel. This feeling of being unable to use his strength made him want to vomit blood. "Admiral Sikaski, watch out behind you!" Just as he was bounced away by the bear again, he suddenly heard anxious reminders from many Navy officers around him. Okainu turned his head in confusion, and saw an overbearing figure attacking him from the air behind him. The huge fist was shrouded in a hazy white light. How is this possible? How come all his injuries are healed? Akanu's face was full of disbelief. Not long ago, he had just glanced in the direction of Whitebeard. At that time, Whitebeard was seriously injured and seemed to be at the end of his life. He could only hold on under the siege of Sengoku and a group of Navy. How come he has fully recovered in just a short while? Akanu's mind was full of question marks, and he could only raise his fist to fight back in panic. However, it was not so easy for him to block Whitebeard's ferocious attack. Whitebeard's domineering fist combined with the power of his fruit smashed him into the ground. His facial features were instantly distorted and several teeth flew out of his mouth. Akanu, who fell to the ground, endured the severe pain and rolled on the ground in a panic, trying to escape from Whitebeard's attack range. But Whitebeard's fists are not something you can dodge just by wanting to. He once again launched an attack that shattered the space, and the powerful shockwave hit the opponent in the blink of an eye. Blood gushed out of Akanu's mouth and his body was thrown far away. "You hurt me badly before, Sakazuki," Whitebeard said in a grim tone. At this moment, a sharp slash with a green glow shot towards Whitebeard from a distance. Whitebeard's eyes turned cold, and he swung his Naginata, relying solely on his overwhelming strength to take the blow. "Do you choose to stand on the side of the Navy, Mihawk?" Facing Hawkeye, who is known as the world #1 swordsman, Whitebeard did not dare to underestimate him and asked in a deep voice, "I just want to see how big the gap is between you and me," Hawkeye said in a cold tone. It seemed that in this man's eyes, apart from swordsmanship, nothing else could disturb his thoughts or shake his position. "Gulila, you little brat, you are really a sword fanatic," Whitebeard said with a chuckle. "Hancock, you will have to take care of all these small fry around here," Crocodile said to the Empress. "Don't worry, Mr. Croc." Hearing her lover calling her name, the Empress replied sweetly, "Inelu, come meet your old rival." Crocodile then looked up at the sky, which was still covered with dark clouds. "Now there are 3 top fighters here, Sengoku, Garp and Kizaru." Crocodile just experienced the feeling of being besieged by 3 people. It was really difficult. Even if he could predict the future, he could not block all attacks. He could only let Enelu come down to help. The huge surprise that Thor prepared for the Navy has been brewing for such a long time, and its power must be enough to give them a hard time. Kizaru had just fired a few lasers at Crocodile and was about to take out the Kusanagi sword to engage in close combat again. However, he did not expect that a figure wrapped in blue lightning would kick him hard in the side and directly kick him out. "Dirty uncle, your opponent is me," Enel said with an excited smile. After spending a long time on the Arc Proverbs, he was already itching to join in the action as he watched the fierce battle going on below. However, without the boss instructions, he didn't dare to come down rashly. After all, the task assigned to him was extremely important. Could this person be the legendary Thunder God? Sengoku looked at the strange-looking and arrogant man in front of him and immediately came to a conclusion. Kizaru crawled out from the rubble with a drooping face. He had forgotten how many times he had been thrown into the ruins today. "It's so annoying," Kizaru said angrily. "I forgot about Crocodile men, and a scary guy like you." "Who was this guy with long earlobes?" While fighting with Crocodile, Garp took the time to look at Enel, who had just entered the scene, and asked curiously, "His speed is so fast that he can kick away Kizaru, the Flash Man. It is really unbelievable that such strength has never been famous in the sea." "Old man, are you tired of living?" Enel couldn't help but get angry when he heard Garp calling him in the way he hated the most. However, seeing that this old man with white hair and beard could fight with his boss to a standstill, he did not take any further action. Without waiting for Kizaru to continue preparing, Enel attacked the opponent again. 2 rays of light, one yellow and one blue, suddenly began to flash in the sky above Marineford. "What a fast speed! Who is this new monster that is so fast that it can match Admiral Kizaru and other Crocodile men? How many people of this strength are there around Crocodile at this time?" Sengoku, together with Garp, who had one arm unable to use strength, fought Crocodile on equal terms. But the war situation had already deviated far from his original plan at this point. Not only was Ace rescued, but Whitebeard also recovered his strength by defeating Crocodile. Although the Whitebeard pirates suffered some losses, they were only minor injuries, and none of the main members died. On the other hand, ever since Crocodile took action, the Navy has been bombarded with thunder, endless quicksand and deadly poison, causing massive loss of life among their grassroots and middle-level officers. The three generals were all tied up, and only he and Garp, two old men with one foot in the coffin, could work together to resist Crocodile, the ferocious Crocodile. At this moment in the battlefield, except for Doflamingo, whose position was unclear, and Moria, who was pretending all the time, there was a strange balance among the other groups of people fighting each other. However, Sengoku knew very well that if any one of the two sides lost their combat effectiveness at this moment, the entire situation would completely collapse. How much the Sengoku now wishes that the Navy could have more top-level combat power, but the reality is so cruel. After this war, we must convince the five elders and completely change the system of the three generals. How can these three people deal with the vicious criminals who are becoming more and more powerful in both strength and power? What Crocodile was thinking at this moment was that the Face King who went to stop Kaido, the beast, would probably arrive here soon. If he couldn't seize the time to inflict heavy damage to the Navy, this war might be stopped in time. The bodies of the three generals can all be transformed into elements, and it is difficult for the annihilation death energy to cause fatal injuries to these people. But the situation is not certain for the two old men in front of us. Even Garp was forced to cut his own flesh to protect himself, and Sengoku certainly cannot avoid this strange harm. In addition, the old man Garp is a truly just man and has not participated in the Navy dirty and inhumane deeds. In addition, his son is the leader of the Revolutionary Army and his grandson is the Straw Hat Boy, so these two people can be of great use to him. If Garp life were harmed, he would immediately have two more mortal enemies. Therefore, he could only say sorry to Sengoku. Thinking of this, the knife in Crocodile hand suddenly became faster. Taking advantage of the opportunity when he used all his strength to cut Garp back dozens of meters with one blow, Crocodile quickly approached Sengoku, who had transformed into a golden Buddha. His left hand, which had been idle all this time, suddenly made a gun-shaped gesture and pointed at Sengoku's legs. Dull shackles. Sengoku, who was rushing forward and punching Crocodile, was completely unprepared for such an attack, and with his huge body, he had no way to avoid it and was immediately hit by the light. With his legs restrained, Sengoku's body, which was rushing forward, suddenly lost balance and fell towards Crocodile. This was the only thought in Sengoku's mind at this moment. No, stop! Garp was scared to death when he saw this scene. He had no idea what Crocodile was going to do next. He rushed forward at the fastest speed in his life, shouting harshly, trying to stop Crocodile. But this distance that could be reached in just 1 second now seemed to be stretched by a light year. Garp watched Crocodile as the sharp blade wrapped in gray-white light pierced into Sengoku's abdomen from bottom to top without any hindrance, all the way to the handle. Bang! Garp punched Crocodile in the side of the face with endless despair and anger, causing Crocodile cheekbone to collapse, and the whole person flew out like a cannonball. Turning around and hurriedly supporting Sengoku's falling body, Garp discovered that the wound had begun to turn black and necrotize, and was slowly spreading. Sengoku also looked down at the long sword that was inserted into his body with a look of astonishment, as if he couldn't believe it. Ah! Garp shouted in despair. He had just felt that strange power and knew that unsolvable feeling of horror. Unless you cut off the flesh and blood that has been contaminated by that power, you can only watch yourself turn into ashes bit by bit. But the knife wound that Sengoku suffered went straight into his abdominal cavity. What should I do? What should I do? Garp tears and snot were pouring out. He tore his hair madly with one hand and reached out with the other hand to pull out the knife that was stuck in Sengoku's chest, but hesitated and clenched his fist. Pull it out. The big Buddha form on Sengoku's body quickly disappeared, and he said calmly to Garp. Garp closed his eyes and grasped the hilt of the knife. Even though he felt the knife begin to madly suck his life force the moment it touched him, he still endured it, pulled out the knife and threw it on the ground. Probably, am I hopeless?" Sengoku said in a somewhat bleak voice, looking at the black wound on his stomach that was constantly expanding. He could clearly feel that his vitality was rapidly draining away, and his stomach felt tingling, but without any pain. Garp covered his face with his hands, tears streaming down his face, but he couldn't utter a single word. "Marshal Sengoku, what wrong with you?" "Marshal Sengoku, medic, call the medic who can treat it. Hurry up and treat Marshal Sengoku." The surrounding Navy officers finally noticed the abnormality of Sengoku at this time, and they shouted anxiously. Sengoku's legs went weak and he fell to the ground, countless memories of his life flashing through his mind like a karaoke lantern. There is the passion and heroism of bravely killing bandits when you are young. There is the ambition and enthusiasm of reaching a high position in middle age. There are also those who, in their old age, have many wise strategies and are able to plan and strategize for the world. He did countless righteous things in his life, but after becoming a general and marshal, his hands were stained with the blood of many innocent people. He actually envied Garp, who could do whatever he wanted, act arbitrarily, and even have himself to clean up after him if he got into trouble. But once you sit in that position, nothing can be controlled by you. Did he ever feel guilty? Of course the answer is yes. People praised him for his unparalleled wisdom and he always accepted it with ease. He calculated that Whitebeard would definitely come at the cost of his life, and that the Whitebeard pirates could be easily provoked into internal strife. It is calculated that the old Whitebeard is no longer as brave as he used to be, and will gradually die under the siege of the Navy. But no matter how much he planned, he never expected that Crocodile would be so powerful and have the ability to turn decay into magic. He didn't expect that he had reached a deal with Whitebeard in advance. I didn't expect that he would have already instigated several of the 7 warlords to rebel. I didn't take into account the various arrangements he made in this war. He never expected that he would soon become the victim of the other party knife. My wisdom is unmatched in the world. The person with real wisdom and incomparable strategy should be the one who can defeat Crocodile, right? Sengoku said to himself with a self-mockery. Crocodile is a terrifying crocodile hiding in the desert. When he shows his sharp teeth, the whole world will tremble. Everyone, be careful. Sengoku used up the last of his strength to shout out these 2 sentences. Then he put his hand on the shoulder of Garp, who was half kneeling in front of him, forced an ugly smile on his face, and said with a very weak voice, "Sometimes I really envy you. You don't have to feel guilty about the justice in your heart. I really want to fight alongside you like a normal Marine again. Unfortunately, I have to go first. Goodbye, old friend." After saying this, the hand on Garp's shoulder slowly slipped away. At this point, in the 1520th year of the Heian calendar, in the epic battle known to the world as the Battle of the Top, the Supreme Commander of the Navy, Buddha Sengoku, fell Shabudi Archipelago. In the square where the live broadcast was being broadcast, the crowd was so densely packed that the silence was a little unreal. Pop, pop, pop. There was only the sound of bubbles bursting one after another. Marshal of the Navy, Buddha Sengoku, died in battle, a trembling voice said. "This can't be real. I must be hallucinating. Is this a movie?" Crocodile killed the Sengoku Marshal. "This world is going to be completely messed up. This is so atrocious. Crocodile deserves death. This is incredible. This is really incredible. It's going to be fun to watch." Crocodile, he did something that even the Pirate King couldn't do. Ha 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 ha. Good, that great. I have decided to join Crocodile. The Navy has suffered such a blow. From now on, the world will be ruled by pirates. As people came to their senses, the scene suddenly became noisy. It's just that the content of people debate has become seriously polarized. Marineford. Marshal Sengoku. The Marshal is dead. At first, the Navy officers who were far away from the execution platform did not understand what was happening, until the news of Sengoku's death resounded throughout the fortress. Most of the soldiers gave up chasing the white pirates and stood there crying in grief. "It a worthy death for you to die on the battlefield." Upon learning of the death of his old rival, Whitebeard fell silent. If Crocodile hadn't appeared, it would probably be Whitebeard who was dead now. But after all, the two have been rivals for decades, so it's inevitable that they feel a little sad about each other's failure. Okainu, who was knocked unconscious by Whitebeard's continuous blows, just woke up and sat up when he received the sad news that the marshal was killed by Crocodile. How could this happen? How could things turn out like this? Okainu, his face covered in blood, covered his chest in extreme pain, his grief evident in his words. "The Sengoku is the flag of the Navy. How can we fight this war if the general flag falls for him, who has always wanted to become the next admiral of the Navy?" How could he not understand what Sengoku death meant to the Navy? From the demoralized sailors around him, he knew that the Navy had been defeated, and completely defeated. All this is caused by Crocodile, that sinister villain. Okainu felt an unprecedented hatred for this person. "We must find a way to kill Crocodile in order to restore the morale of the Navy." "Dirty uncle, your marshal seems to be dead." Enelu, who was fighting fiercely with Kizaru in the sky, suddenly blocked the opponent lightsaber with his scepter and said with a gloating look on his face. Kizaru, who was concentrating on fighting Enel, didn't notice the situation below at all. After hearing what the other party said, he forced Enel back with a sword, lowered his head and looked down, confirming this fact. Mr. Sengoku, when facing Kizaru, who was always careless about everything, his voice finally became normal. "So you can speak properly. Don't be distracted. We haven't decided the winner yet." Anil rushed up again without caring about the other party's current mood. However, he felt that the opponent in front of him suddenly became crazy. Not only was his sword power extremely sharp, but his strength also increased by several times in an instant, making it difficult for him to resist. Aokiji also received the news of Sengoku's death. He gritted his teeth and used Ice Age to completely freeze the area where his opponent was, then quickly rushed to the execution platform. But when he arrived there, all he saw was Garp sitting cross-legged on the ground with his hand covering his face and weeping, and a group of crying Marines around him, and black ashes piled in the shape of a human on the ground. Whereas Mr. Sengoku Aokiji's tone was so calm that it was a bit suffocating. "That it," said the crying Marine, pointing at the pile of ashes. Aokiji had a gloomy face and stared at the pile of black ash for a long time without saying a word. He just clenched his fists and his body seemed to be shaking slightly. "You were right beside him. Why didn't you protect him at this moment?" Aokiji suddenly became furious, picked up Garp, who was sitting on the ground with both hands, and questioned him viciously. "I am sorry, I was just a little bit, Garp said in tears. How could he not feel regret, self-blame, and heartache? He was an old comrade in arms and brother who had fought side by side with him for decades. He was not a relative, but he was better than a relative. If he hadn't been soft-hearted in Alabasta, none of this would have happened." "I am sorry, can you bring back Mr. Sengoku life?" Aokiji roared and punched Garp away. He wanted to continue rushing forward and beating Garp, but was held tightly by a group of Marines. General Kuzn, Vice Admiral Garp really did his best. "The war isn't over yet. Now is not the time for civil unrest." The sailors spoke out to persuade them. "Yes, the war is not over yet." Hearing this, Aokiji suddenly woke up and calmed down. Sengoku had always valued him very much and trained him as the successor to the marshal, and he was very grateful for this favor. However, now that Sengoku has died, the Navy is leaderless and has suffered heavy casualties. If he were the admiral of the Navy, what would he do at this moment? Where is Crocodile now? Aokiji turned his head and asked the Navy beside him. After being driven into the ruins by Vice Admiral Garp, there has been no movement for a long time, the Navy said, pointing to the completely collapsed Navy headquarters. At this moment, a lot of sand suddenly flew out from the ruins and began to gather in one place. It was relatively slow at first, but then it became faster and faster. In just a few seconds, a human figure had been condensed. It was the crocodile that had disappeared for a long time. He looked extremely miserable at this moment, with the left side of his cheek distorted and deformed. It was clearly the congestion and swelling caused by the facial bones being smashed by a heavy punch. He couldn't even speak now. Nowadays, his physique is comparable to that of a monster, even though he is not as abnormal as Kaido, who has the bonus of the animal-type fruit. The solidity of his flesh and bones is rare in the world, even harder than high-strength alloys. Garp punch was able to collapse half of his face, which shows how terrifying the opponent's strength is. This is an old man who is nearly 80 years old, not a young man in his prime. It's so terrifying. A pink light emanated from his hand and he touched his face, and Crocodile's entire condition began to regress again, but soon returned to normal as if nothing had happened to him. There's no way to kill a monster like this. No matter how much damage he inflicts, as long as he is still alive, he will recover immediately. It's so terrifying. This is an ability that only gods can possess. Give up. We can't win. Seeing that Crocodile had recovered quickly and the marshal was killed, pessimism quickly spread among the navy, and morale fell to the bottom. After twisting his chin and feeling that there was nothing unusual, Crocodile waved his hand, and the sand on the ground rolled Anubis back into his hand. Now that Sengoku is dead, it's time to put an end to this war. Crocodile, I am going to kill you. When Cap saw Crocodile reappear, and still in good condition, he immediately rushed up with a roar, wanting to fight Crocodile to the death. However, Crocodile obviously no longer had the will to continue fighting with him, and continued to use the annihilation slash at Garp. Seeing this, Garp could only defend himself carefully. This strange power was too terrifying, and he didn't want to follow in Sengoku's footsteps. But he was also determined to kill Crocodile and avenge Sengoku, so he couldn't help but scream in anger. Aokiji suddenly became nervous when he heard Crocodile words. The other side actually prepared a backup plan to end this war. Judging from Crocodile's previous series of moves, this is definitely not good news. We can't allow this damn Crocodile to continue slaughtering the navy. It is necessary to preserve as much manpower as possible. As long as there are people, everything is possible. Temporary success or failure does not mean that the Navy will always lose. So now, the only way to better preserve the manpower is to let the soldiers evacuate. Pass the order down, all Navy officers below the rank of Vice Admiral, evacuate Marineford. We have already lost this war, and we can't allow any more deaths. Aokiji took a deep breath and said in a heavy tone, "No retreat at this moment," a voice objected harshly. Aokiji knew who was speaking without even turning around. "This is the Navy headquarters. Where are you going to retreat to? Where can we retreat to? The whole world is watching now. Even if Marshal Sengoku sacrifices himself or suffers heavy casualties, we cannot take the initiative to retreat. Once we voluntarily admit defeat, how can we represent the world government and continue to uphold justice?" Akainu refuted harshly. "I understand what you are saying, but everyone is dead. How can you maintain justice?" Aokiji retorted angrily without showing any weakness. Hey, you still have the energy to quarrel now. Do you really not understand the situation? The Navy was already at a critical moment of life and death, but these two admirals still had the mind to quarrel. This really opened Crocodile's eyes and he couldn't help but interrupt. "Do you think we are afraid of you? Use whatever means you have. I, Sakazuki, will take it alone." Akainu stared at Crocodile and said harshly, "Ha, you answered it alone?" Crocodile laughed out loud as if he had heard a huge joke. "Inelu, did you hear that someone wants to take on your Raikage alone?" Crocodile said jokingly to Akainu. Enel flashed and immediately distanced himself from Kizaru. "I heard it. I'd really like to see how he going to respond," Enel said with a cruel smile. "Then let him try it." "As you wish." Thunder. Enelu shot a bolt of lightning from his fingertips toward the sky, going straight through the thick, inky black clouds. Immediately afterwards, everyone in Marineford saw a scene that terrified them. I saw an enormous dark blue sphere with a diameter of more than 1 kilometer slowly passing through the clouds and falling towards Marineford. On the surface of the sphere, countless violent thunders flashed continuously and densely, and the rumbling sound of thunder was so dense that it became one An object so huge that it blocked out the sky and the sun was pressing towards Marineford at a speed visible to the naked eye. This shocking feeling of oppression made everyone breathing stop. A strong sense of fear spread in everyone's heart. What on earth is this? It falling towards Marineford? It horrible. Absolutely horrible. I guarantee that if this thing falls down, all of us will die. Run. Run quickly. If you don't leave quickly, you will definitely die. Okeanu was looking up at the sky with sweat all over his forehead. The scene seemed like the end of the world. He regretted very much why he had just said such bold words in front of so many people. Sakazuki, didn't you just say you were going to take this thing? I am looking forward to seeing your performance. Crocodile face was full of sarcasm. Listen to my orders. Everyone evacuate Marineford immediately. At this moment, someone finally gave the order to retreat again. The one who spoke this time was Vice Admiral Garp, a hero in the eyes of the Navy. Garp prestige in the Navy is far beyond the reach of the three admirals. As soon as he opened his mouth, both soldiers and officers began to flee towards the warships around Marineford as if they had been pardoned. This time, Okeanu rarely refuted. Everyone either ran away or looked up to see the terrifying thunderball falling from the sky. No one noticed that a few sneaky figures, taking advantage of everyone's attention not being on the ground, quietly appeared under the execution platform and quietly moved Blackbeard's body away. In the sea miles away from Marineford, a three-masted sailing ship flying a red pirate flag was speeding towards the naval headquarters. Shanks, are we a little late? Lake Hairu said stupidly while looking at the huge ball of thunder in the sky. Red-haired Shanks held down Griffin hanging on his waist with one hand, his face looking more solemn than ever before. What on earth is going on here? The entire Marineford looks like it about to be razed to the ground. Ben Beckman observed carefully with a telescope. Seeing the thunderball getting closer and closer, Okeanu finally couldn't bear it any longer and flew into the sky using the moon step. He wanted to blow this thing up in the air. Big fire breath. After climbing to a height of 1,000 meters, Okeanu's fist turned into magma, and countless magma shells were ejected from it, shooting towards the thunderball. However, after the magma drilled into the thunderball, there was no response for a long time, as if it had disappeared out of thin air. How is this possible? What the hell is this? Okeanu said through gritted teeth. Meteor volcano. Okeanu, who refused to believe in evil, launched his strongest skill. Countless smoking magma fireballs fell from the sky like meteorites and hit the thunderball. However, apart from more debris falling from the thunderball, it had no effect on this horrible thing. Is there no way at all? Okeanu thought in despair. If this thing were to fall on Marineford, the entire island would probably disappear without a trace. Aokiji and Kizaru saw that Okeanu's attack had no effect, so they both took action. Kizaru shot the Yasukani no Magatrama directly at the thunderball. Aokiji then shot out ice cubes at the pheasant mouth again. It doesn't work. It still doesn't work. Evacuate. We can't stop them, Aokiji advised in a deep voice. Naturally, they could not withstand the horrific killing moves created by Enel. In the original work, Luffy did break a lightning bolt. That because Luffy is an insulator, and he brought a golden ball that acts as a conductor and directly entered the thunderball. The golden ball was danced around non-stop, disrupting the rules of the Thunder Spirit, which eventually caused the Thunder Spirit to disappear. However, it is not clear whether the several powerful people present have the ability to break the thunder, who can be as fierce as Luffy and dare to drill into the inside of Raying and destroy it. The damage caused by the previous tens of thousands of thunders alone was so terrifying. If you go in, who can guarantee what the situation is inside, and whether you will be immediately burned into charcoal by lightning? Leave, we have already won this war, Crocodile shouted. Crocodile flew to the Empress and put his arms around her slender waist. Come on, Hancock, I will take you to watch the fireworks in the sky. Crocodile Kun. Hancock felt the strong masculine scent of Crocodile, and the burning feeling of his big hand touching her waist. Her pretty face suddenly turned red. Her body was so limp that she couldn't exert any strength and could only half lean on Crocodile. Crocodile looked down at Hancock, smiled slightly, stomped his feet, jumped up, bypassed Lei Ying and flew towards the Ark Proverbs. At this time, Bentham looked like Ace. He turned into a fireman and burned through the ice that froze him, and jumped out. When he saw the thunder falling from the sky, he couldn't help but be stunned. Seeing his boss flying towards the ark, he hurriedly chased after him. Enelu curled his lips and looked at Kizaru with a somewhat unsatisfied look, as he hadn't had enough fun yet. But the boss had already said so he had no choice but to leave. Bear watched Crocodile and his gang leave, and he had no reason to stay, so he flew towards the ark with a soft bow sound. Whitebeard no longer had any interest in continuing to fight Hawkeye. After sweeping the opponent away with a sword, he jumped onto the warship that his sons had already seized. Brother Ming saw that everyone was starting to evacuate. He glanced at the Thunderball and realized that it was not advisable to stay here for long, so he also jumped into the air and left. "What are you three waiting for? If you don't leave, are you waiting to die?" Garp reminded them loudly, then ignored them and ran towards the warship on the beach with moon steps. Seeing that things had came to this point, Akainu finally chose to leave, even though he was extremely reluctant. Kizaru and Aokiji followed closely behind. A minute later, there were still many severely injured sailors and pirates in the entire Marineford who were unable to move, waiting desperately for the arrival of death. There was nothing they could do. Both the White Guard and the Navy were filled with sadness, and many of them covered their faces and cried. More than 10 seconds later, the terrifying lightning created by the thunder god Enlil finally fell on Marineford. Boom! An extremely dazzling ball of light exploded, and countless extremely thick lightning pillars danced wildly in the sky, making it impossible for anyone to look directly at it. What followed was a deafening roar and explosion. Everyone was shocked speechless by this doomsday-like scene. The earthquake and tsunami created by Whitebeard can make people who are in it feel despair. Then Lei Ying would make sure that anyone who dared to approach him would have no hope of survival. The strong white light lasted for more than 10 seconds before finally dissipating. All that was reflected in everyone's eyes was the surging and rolling sea water. The naval headquarters of Marineford, which had a history of hundreds of years, had completely disappeared. It gone. The Admiralty headquarters has disappeared. We have no home anymore. Does the Navy still exist? Where is our destination? The Navy soldiers stared blankly at the place where Marineford was originally located. Some people were distraught, some burst into tears. Akainu took off his hat and covered his face with it, so no one could see his expression. But from his constantly shaking shoulders, one could also guess how he felt at the moment. "Who can tell me what happened?" Shanks asked with a grim face. His original purpose was to reduce casualties and prevent the war from further expanding. But what he didn't expect was that before he reached the battlefield, the war ended in an incredible way. As the Navy with the most powerful military force in the world, even his own base was wiped off the map. Shanks felt as if the world seemed to be playing a big joke on him. "Shanks, I found Whitebeard himself in Whitebeard Fleet over there," Jesus Boo said loudly. "Where is it?" "Pull the boat over there. I must find out what happened in Marineford," Shanks said with a stern face. The Shabati archipelago was in a panic at this moment. After a flash of white light, the big screen had lost all signals. It absolutely horrible what happened to Marineford in the end. This thunder god is simply a true god. Crocodile methods are too cruel. He wants to completely destroy the Navy headquarters. What would happen if that huge thunderball fell near us? After the chaotic situation continued for several minutes, the picture suddenly reappeared on the big screen. However, apart from the vast ocean, there are less than 100 warships belonging to pirates and the Navy. Marineford has completely disappeared. Then the picture direction changed, and Crocodile, dressed in a dapper manner, appeared in the camera. As things stand now, the war is completely over. The Navy is undoubtedly the biggest loser. People around the world, please don't panic. I am Crocodile and I am not a terrorist. I just want to eliminate the tyranny of the celestial dragons and let everyone live a happy life without oppression and equality. I can assure everyone that no force will be used against any innocent person. I have only one target, and that is the celestial dragons. Lord Yim, who sits on the throne of the void, I know you exist. I also know that you possess the ancient weapon, Heavenly King. If you dare to launch ancient weapons against my territory, then Marijoa, The Valley of the Gods, and Peg City will also have scenes like Marineford. Even the Red Earth continent, I have the ability to turn it into a desert. If you don't believe me, feel free to try. Finally, I hope that all the people in the world will see the true face of the celestial dragons and the world government and stop aiding and abetting their evil deeds. I welcome anyone who shares our aspirations to come to Alabasta and join our resistance to overthrow the celestial dragons. After Crocodile finished speaking, he immediately cut off the live broadcast signal. The entire live broadcast site was in an uproar. Marineford has completely disappeared. I am afraid all those who didn't have time to escape have been destroyed. Right? Who is Lord Yimu? What is the ancient weapon? I don't know who Yimu is, but the ancient weapon has the terrifying power to destroy a small country with one strike. Let's overthrow the rule of the celestial dragons together. That sounds really exciting. Anyone who wants to go to Alabasta can take my ship with you. Don't worry. Who knows if the world government will take crazy revenge on Alabasta? Crocodile has a terrifying weapon like Thor. How could the world government dare to cause trouble in Alabasta? In short, the world government lost face in this war. The Navy suffered heavy losses, but Crocodile unexpectedly became the biggest winner. Alabasta, Casino Royale. The Baroque Works executives who were unable to participate in the Battle of Marineford gathered together, each holding a copy of the latest world economic news. It was such an epic battle. It's a shame I couldn't take part in it, Jem said with some disappointment. I really want to experience the style of the world #1 swordsman, Bonus said with shining eyes. Want to fight? Beb said in a muffled voice. But the boss is too terrifying, he can even kill the Navy Marshal. That old man is also an incredible strong man. Misita sighed. The boss didn't take us there. He had his own considerations. Only Whitebeard and the captain of the 1st Squadron, Marco, are in the Whitebeard Pirates group and can fight against the top forces of the Navy. The other captains are only about as strong as us, and they can't play any role in turning the tide of the battle. So the boss only brought Enelu and Bentham, and also instigated 2 Shichibukai to rebel. One is to replenish the top combat power of the Whitebeard Pirates. The second is that you don't have to worry about loss of life. After all, even if Enelu and Bentham can't win, they can easily escape the battlefield. The boss doesn't have to distract himself to take care of them. After a period of growth, Gardino has made great progress not only in strength but also in his overall view. He can see Crocodile intention at a glance. I feel relieved to see that he is okay. Vivi chewed the contents of the newspaper carefully, and only breathed a sigh of relief after reading all the contents of the newspaper. But does anyone know what's going on with the Empress standing next to the uncle? Why is she so close to the uncle? Then Vivi pointed to the newspaper and saw Hancock standing next to Crocodile with a crazy look on his face and said sullenly, I know the Empress. She is known as the most beautiful woman in the world, Gardino said with a fascinated look on his face. What do you mean? Am I not pretty enough? Vivi looked at Gardino with a bad expression. Vivi, of course you are the most beautiful woman in the world in our eyes. When Gardino saw the other person's eyes, he was startled and changed his words very cleverly. Everyone saw how much his boss doted on this little girl, and he didn't want to cause himself any trouble. HMPH. You are smart. Vivi snorted coldly. These women out there really have no sense of self-discipline. When they see an attractive man, they take the initiative to approach him. Don't worry, Vivi. If she dares to come back with the boss, we will help you deal with her, Sarah said righteously. That right, our boss is so outstanding, so rare in the world. We absolutely cannot let some wild woman out there snatch him away. Only our most beautiful and lovely Princess Vivi is a perfect match for the boss. Misita echoed with a righteous look on her face. What are you talking about? Who said they wanted to be a partner with him? Sarah and Michita words made Vivi suddenly feel embarrassed. She immediately became shy and her face turned red. On board the Ark Maxim, the atmosphere in the cabin was surprisingly strange at this time. In front of Crocodile, 2 extremely beautiful women with very different styles sat opposite each other, a proud and cold person, with the demeanor of a true emperor, a gentle and friendly person with a sweet smile. Neither of them spoke, They just stared at each other quietly. The air pressure in the cabin was so low that it was almost impossible to breathe. Crocodile eyes swept across the two people's cheeks from time to time, and he felt extremely overwhelmed. This is the first time these two people meet, so why are they in such a tense situation? Hancock, what are your plans next? Crocodile finally couldn't help but break the eerie silence. I heard that Mr. Crocker personally built an extremely prosperous city in Alabasta. Naturally, I want to go and experience the charm of that place. Hancock looked at Crocodile lovingly and said with a tender and sweet look on her face, "That fine." Crocodile's scalp tingled when he saw her, and he nodded stiffly. "I wonder if my partners at Baroque Works have changed a lot now. I really miss them," Nico Robin suddenly said. "You will know when you see it," Crocodile replied casually. "Of course I am not familiar with that place." "Could you, Mr. Crook, be my tour guide?" Hancock said pitifully. "That a small matter. This is my first time to Eden as well, and I just happen to be in need of a tour guide." Nico Robin looked at Crocodile with burning eyes. "Then we can go together." Crocodile agreed without hesitation. "Nicole Robin, you have so many friends in Alabasta, you can let them accompany you," Hancock said on her face. "Boss, is that what you mean?" Nico Robin looked at Crocodile again. If Crocodile hadn't noticed the flashing of swords and sabers between the two at this time, he would be a real piece of wood. "Damn it, I am not in a romantic relationship with these two women now. Why do I feel like I have entered a sure field?" Crocodile pursed his lips and thought to himself, "How about one day each?" Crocodile asked tentatively. "No," the two women said in unison, rejecting Crocodile proposal. Blue blue blue, blue blue blue. Crocodile, feeling a little scared, quickly picked up the phone, feeling very grateful to the person who called to rescue him. "Hey, Uncle. When are you coming back? I miss you so much." Vivi's sweet and coquettish voice came from the other end of the phone, which really caught Crocodile off guard. "Ah, we are on the way back. We will probably arrive in 3 days." Crocodile glanced at the other two expressions as he spoke, and felt the tension in the room grow even lower. "Uncle, did you bring me a gift this time?" "I have prepared a surprise for you," Vivi asked happily. A gift? Crocodile thought hard about what he could think of as a gift, but this time he was so focused on planning the war at the top that he didn't even think about bringing a gift for Vivi. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Crocodile's mind. "Oh, right, don't we still have that thing? It definitely enough as a gift." "Of course there is a gift, and it will definitely satisfy you." Crocodile quickly gave the other party an affirmative answer. Hee, I knew that Uncle would be the best to me. "I will wait for you." Vivi smiled with satisfaction. After hanging up the phone, Crocodile looked at the two women in the room again. Nico Robin remained expressionless, but her beautiful eyes paused slightly, as if she was thinking about something. Hancock had a pitiful expression on her face, biting her lower lip and looking at Crocodile resentfully. "Who is this woman?" Hancock asked faintly. The phone call just now made the Empress feel a strong sense of crisis. How could a woman suddenly appear and have such a close relationship with Clock? Clock even prepared a gift for her. This woman calls Clock uncle, so she must be very young. Could it be that Crocodile likes young girls? The Empress suddenly fell into endless inferiority. So what if she is the most beautiful woman in the world? She will still grow old. Who is this woman? Crocodile didn't know how to answer when he heard this question. "I couldn't help but think about what kind of relationship I have with Vivi now. To say that they are superiors and subordinates would be a bit stiff and inhumane. The relationship between the two is indeed a little better than that of others. To say that we are friends doesn't seem like it. It is not true to say that they were lovers. After all, neither of them had clearly expressed their feelings for each other, and it was somewhat unclear. She is the Princess of Alabasta, Nefertari Vivi." Crocodile finally gave an answer that no one could fault. "Vivi has grown a lot now. I saw in the newspaper that she seems to have taken over a lot of your businesses." Nico Robin said. "Yes, when people go through hardships, they will naturally grow up quickly." Crocodile sighed. "But how can she call you uncle? Doesn't it make the age gap between you seem too big?" Nico Robin said casually. Great. When the Empress heard Nico Robin's speech, she couldn't help but give her a thumbs up in her heart. She was still worrying about the issue of age, but unexpectedly Nico Robin immediately gave her a perfect solution. He is indeed a cultured intellectual, he hit the vital point with one blow. Well, there is indeed a big age gap between her and me, so there's nothing wrong with calling him uncle. Crocodile pursed her lips. Young girls will always look up to stronger, more mature men out of admiration. When they grow up, they will find that if the age gap between them and the person they admire is too big, they will often regret it. After all, when they mature and reach the most beautiful age for women, they find that the person next to them is already old. That kind of psychological gap is huge, Nico Robin said meaningfully. After listening to this, Crocodile lowered his head and fell into deep thought. Nico Robin couldn't help but smile when she saw Crocodile's current state. The Empress shuddered when she saw the other person smile. She thought the little girl on the phone just now was her strongest enemy. She never thought that the real rival was right in front of her. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that Croc's attitude towards Princess Vivi is definitely unusual. Just a few simple words from this woman Nico Robin made Croc start to rethink his relationship with her. What a deep scheming and what a cruel method. Hancock looked at Nico Robin as if she were facing a formidable enemy. Is there any problem? Nico Robin tilted her head and looked at the Empress with a harmless smile. Number. The Empress replied with a tense face. When it comes to fighting, among all the women in this world, except Big Mom, there is no other one that Boa Hancock can take seriously. But when it comes to snatching men and competing with women, she is just a scumbag with a fighting power of only 5. The women on 9 Snake Island were all obedient to her because of her powerful strength and beautiful appearance. Anyone who dares to play tricks on her will definitely die. I have never been in a relationship before, so my experience can be said to be absolutely zero. Besides her, there are 2 other women who are not much worse than her in front of Clock. How can she win their hearts? This makes her feel extremely sad. Nico Robin looked at Crocodile, then at the Empress, and seeing that they were both deep in thought, she didn't want to interrupt. She was so bored that she couldn't help but take a closer look at the Queen of 9 Snake Island in front of her. The woman in front of me is so beautiful. She has always been very confident in her beauty. But when she saw the true face of the Empress, she couldn't help but feel a little overshadowed. But now, there are more and more beautiful women around Crocodile, and each of them is very beautiful, which makes her feel a strong sense of crisis. She escaped from O'Hara when she was young and has been running around for more than 20 years. Apart from trying to find the authentic text of history, her only small pursuit is to survive. As for everything else, she always holds a non-competitive attitude. However, Crocodile is the only exception. Because she had lived such a hard, tiring and fearful life over the years, for more than 20 years, only when she was with this man could she feel an unprecedented sense of security. Even when he was with the Straw Hat Pirates, there was only happiness and carefreeness, and things like a sense of security were still extremely scarce. How she longed for a warm harbor that could shelter her from the wind and rain. And now, this harbor is right before her. In the whole world, there is no one else who can satisfy all her needs like Crocodile. He was tall and handsome, very strong, and had unparalleled intelligence, but more importantly, he treated her very well, and it can be said that she can satisfy all his fantasies about a man and is simply a perfect existence. Whenever she recalled the feeling of being held in his arms and comforted by his gentle voice, she couldn't sleep at night and felt hot all over. Crocodile, she will never give up, no matter who her opponent is. Zero-chan, we have arrived in Baltimore. At this moment, Bentham suddenly broke into the cabin shouting. But when he sensed the strange atmosphere in the room, his cheerful expression immediately disappeared. Well, I just want to say that the Revolutionary Army is already waiting at the port below. After saying this in a low voice, Bentham hurriedly fled. Would you 2 beauties like to go down together and experience the style of the most vicious criminal in the world? Crocodile invited Robin and Hancock. Of course I have to go. It really boring staying on the boat all the time. Hancock accepted it happily. Okay, didn't Kuma want to take a picture of me here before? Now that I am here, I might as well go and take a look. Robin smiled. When Crocodile stepped out of the cabin, The bear was already standing by the side of the boat waiting. Bentham was lying on the side of the ship, looking down. Enel was sitting on his golden throne, chewing an apple. Let all go down together this time. The Revolutionary Army has given us such a grand reception, so I am sure they have prepared a lot of delicious food and wine. Crocodile said this to Enel and Bentham. Baltimore, the land of white earth. The leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon, led a group of Revolutionary Army cadres and hundreds of Revolutionary Army soldiers to wait at the port dock. The Revolutionary Army Chief of Staff Sabo, the Demon King Agkov, Lightning, Kral, and the 4 major army commanders from the east, west, south and north were all present. The Revolutionary Army gave the highest standard of reception etiquette to the arrival of Crocodile, one of the former 7 warlords of the sea, because 2 days ago, in that grand battle that attracted worldwide attention, Crocodile cooperated with the Whitebeard pirates and dealt a heavy blow to the Navy headquarters, which was at its peak. Not only did he kill Sengoku, the supreme commander of the Navy, but he also wiped out the Navy headquarters, Marineford, from this world, killing and injuring tens of thousands of elite Navy soldiers. Such a heart-stirring and world-shaking record not only shook the world government dominance over the entire world, but also really boosted the morale of the Revolutionary Army, making them more hopeful of overthrowing the rule of the Celestial Dragons. Such a person, who came to the Revolutionary Army headquarters with several important figures who participated in the battle that day. How could the entire Revolutionary Army not pay attention to him? Here it comes. The ladyboy Queen Imkov not only had big eyes but also very good eyesight. She was the first to discover the trace of the Ark proverbs and shouted loudly, "It really impressive. Not only can the vehicle fly, but it is also made of so much gold." Sabo sighed as he looked at the landing spaceship with his hands on his back. That too exaggerated. If we sell this ship, I am afraid it can at least bring in tens of billions of Baileys in military expenses. Clar muttered. Da'arag was also very much looking forward to this meeting, not only because of Crocodile crazy record that shocked everyone. He was really surprised that Bartholomew Kuma, an old comrade who had lost contact with them for several years, actually called him personally to communicate with him. According to rumors, Bear underwent transformation by the world government for some reason. Perhaps it was for this reason that Kuma did not dare to continue contacting them, fearing that the world government would discover the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army and launch a devastating attack on them. The golden spaceship slowly landed at the port, and several tall figures appeared on the side of the ship. Everyone on the boat was very powerful and they easily jumped onto the dock without any need for a springboard. Da'arag took the lead and extended his hand to Crocodile enthusiastically. "Welcome, Mr. Crocodile. I have heard a lot about you, Da'arag," Crocodile responded enthusiastically. "What you did in Marineford has earned you a large number of admirers among the Revolutionary Army." Dragon said, "It just a contribution to the destruction of the Celestial Dragons. It nothing to mention." Crocodile waved his hand modestly. "This is the Thunder God Enelu, right? He is indeed very impressive." After the two let go of each other hands, Dragon turned his gaze to Enel, who was standing behind Crocodile, his eyes full of admiration. "Such extremely powerful subordinates can make any opponent afraid to use force, and their deterrent power is as terrifying as ancient weapons." Enel always has a condescending expression towards everyone except his boss. However, Crocodile gave him a heads up in advance that Dragon was a top-level warrior whose strength was no weaker than his. So Enel reluctantly shook the hand that Dragon extended. "This guy must be the thousand-faced demon man mentioned in the newspaper, right? May I know what your name is?" Brother Da'arag also thinks highly of Bentham. After all, this guy ever-changing abilities are simply amazing. When it comes to disguise, lurking and assassination, I am afraid no one in the world can match him. "My name is Bentham. You can just call me Bentham." "Thousand-faced demon man, which idiot gave me this name, but I like it, ha 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 ha." When Bentham heard the nickname Thousand-faced demon man, he was so happy that he couldn't stop smiling and laughed loudly in a hoarse voice. He, Bentham, is also a well-known figure in this world, so how can he not be happy? "Old friend, I never thought we would meet again." Da'arag gave the bear a big hug with tears in his eyes. The bear raised the corner of his mouth slightly and patted Da'arag's shoulder. "If it weren't for Crocodile, I would have become a mindless killing machine now." Kum aside, "I am glad you came back safely. We can have a drink together and reminisce about the past." Da'arag looked up at the bear and said, "Ms. Boa Hancock, Queen of the Amazon Lily Kingdom, your beauty and strength are both amazing. Welcome to Baltimore." Then Dragon looked at the Queen. "Is this the Nine Snakes Empress? She's so beautiful." The young men in the Revolutionary Army immediately became agitated after seeing the Empress. The Empress hated all men except Crocodile, and she only nodded slightly in response to Dragon greeting out of Crocodile consideration. "Miss Nico Robin, the Revolutionary Army really lacks knowledgeable historians like you. If there is a chance, could you please teach us some historical knowledge?" Dragon was also jealous of Nico Robin. Since the destruction of O'Hara, the only truly talented and knowledgeable historian in the world was the woman in front of him. Their Revolutionary Army also wanted to know what happened during the blank 100 years. "Of course," Nico Robin said with a chuckle. The man in front of her was Luffy's father. Even though he looked a little fierce, she felt an inexplicable sense of intimacy with him. Naturally, she had no reason to refuse such a small request. In just a few words, everyone in Crocodile Group felt each other respect and enthusiasm. "I have to say that Da'arag is a man who has his own way of doing things, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to gather such a large group of like-minded people around him." After greeting everyone, Dragon introduced the main cadres of the Revolutionary Army to Crocodile and the others. Then he led Crocodile and his group to the banquet venue prepared in advance. The Revolutionary Army has always been hiding in the dark, constantly fighting against the world government, so their lives are naturally relatively frugal. The dishes prepared for Crocodile and his friends were not particularly precious or rare, but they were prepared with great care and were particularly sumptuous. After eating and drinking, Crocodile followed Dragon to the Revolutionary Army Combat Center conference room and began this formal meeting. "We have already had a rough idea of Mr. Crocodile's intentions in the newspapers. Both of us exist to overthrow the rule of the Celestial Dragons, but there must be differences in some aspects. I wonder if Mr. Crocodile can tell me what you will do next after overthrowing the Celestial Dragon regime. Do you want to become the king of the entire world, or establish a united government to govern all the countries in this world?" Da'arag asked straight to the point. "Overthrowing the Celestial Dragons is only the first step. After them, the feudal ruling class of the world will be eliminated. The power of the entire world will be in the hands of the majority, rather than being controlled by a small group of nobles," Crocodile said frankly. "What did you say?" Dragon was shocked. He couldn't believe that these were words spoken by a man who came from a pirate family. "Literally, of course." Crocodile spread his hands. "You overthrew the Celestial Dragons and the world government, but not for the purpose of dominating the world." Dragon confirmed again, still unable to believe it. "I just can't stand their condescending attitude." "All people are born equal, right?" Crocodile said without any reservation. A man with such strength and power, who was born a pirate, was known by the world as the most sinister careerist and conspirator. "The purpose of overthrowing the world aristocracy is simply because they can't stand it." It felt like Da'arag's worldview had been shattered. "So if you achieve your goal, what will you do next?" Da'arag asked puzzledly. "Of course, I want to get married, have kids, become a rich man and enjoy a life." Da'arag looked at Crocodile in bewilderment. His heart was filled with turmoil and he couldn't calm down for a long time. "This is really too shocking. I will just destroy the Celestial Dragons, the rest is up to you, the Revolutionary Army." Crocodile grinned. Real, every word is true. After getting Crocodile reaffirmation, Da'arag finally put his mind at ease. "As far as I know, although you call yourselves a revolutionary army, I have never heard that you have your own revolutionary program." "This is not acceptable," Crocodile said suddenly. "Revolutionary program. The core idea of our revolutionary army is to overthrow the tyranny of the aristocracy and the rule of the Celestial Dragons, but we have never considered what you said." Dragon frowned. "There are more than 300 countries in this world, and each country has its own nobles and their forces. If you want to change the world with just a few of you, it will probably take hundreds of years. It's just a pipe dream. So you have to find a way to spread your thoughts and keep visioning. This will help us gain more support and allow more people to become like-minded partners like you. There's an old saying that a single spark can start a prairie fire. As long as you have a revolutionary program and ideas that convince others, you will attract more and more people to join the revolution. Crocodile explained patiently. But what should we do after listening to Crocodile words? Dorag had a vague idea in his mind, but he couldn't grasp it, so he couldn't help but ask humbly. Let me ask you a question first. Which two groups do you think have the most serious, intense and largest conflicts in the world? Crocodile asked in return. Navy and pirates, Drago said without hesitation. Superficial, isn't it? Crocodile chuckled and pointed at Dorag. The conflict between the Navy and the pirates is naturally intense. How much of the world do they occupy? At only 1 million people. Even if you have the most powerful military force, can you represent the whole world? Think about it again, Crocodile said in a persuasive manner. Are those commoners and nobles? Dragon said cautiously. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army, he was like a humbly seeking advice from Crocodile. As expected of you, you are the leader of the Revolutionary Army. You really understand everything, Crocodile praised. No, number, Dorag said embarrassedly. The nobles are like ships in the sea, and the common people are the endless ocean. The sea can carry ships and allow them to sail on it. But is it possible for wind and waves to arise and overturn these ships? Crocodile asked in a deep voice. His very vivid metaphor made Dorag suddenly realize the truth. Mr. Crocodile really woke me up with a word, Dorag said, slapping his thigh. We have always relied on our own strength to fight against the nobles. Even though we have overthrown the original regimes of several countries, we have made great sacrifices. Moreover, in some countries, after we evacuated, some wealthy and powerful people regained control of the country lifeline and restored the monarchy, making all our efforts go to waste. Dorag couldn't help but sigh as he recalled their revolutionary journey over the years. So, you have to let the common people know that they also have the right to govern the country and the ability to control their own destiny. So the most important point is to go back to the beginning. We cannot allow power to fall into the hands of a small group of people. Otherwise, the resurgence of aristocracy and monarchy is undoubted. The more Dorag listened to Crocodile, the more he felt that this man was simply a genius. Every word he said was enlightening to him. My original thoughts seemed as childish as those of a 3-year-old child in front of him. In order to explain it more clearly to Dorag, Crocodile stood up, picked up the chalk, and wrote a few lines on the blackboard behind him. Republic, monarchy, parliamentary system, people, representative system. Dorag read out the words Crocodile had written on the blackboard one by one. He knew all of these words separately, but when they were put together, they left him completely confused. This is a concrete way of putting power in the hands of the majority. These 4 systems operate in different ways. When the time comes, which country is more suitable for which system, you have to analyze the specific issues and avoid mechanically copying them. Next, Crocodile picked up the pointer beside him and began to give Dorag a detailed explanation. Each system was explained to him clearly and in an easy-to-understand way. Dorag took out his notebook and took notes as he listened, like a primary school student. Dragon even had an illusion that this man Crocodile did not belong to their world at all. Otherwise, how could he come up with such incredible things? He really wanted to open the other person brain and carefully study the structure of the other person brain. Crocodile. This lecture lasted the entire evening. Dorag went from being confused at the beginning to gradually gaining clarity of thought, and finally to sudden enlightenment. This made him feel a sense of admiration for Crocodile, and he wanted to immediately become his disciple. After all, in this world, there are powerful warriors everywhere, but there are very few people with real ideas. The only group of knowledgeable people were blasted into pieces by the demon-slaying order 20 years ago. Crocodile's appearance was like a guiding light, illuminating the dark road ahead of him. If he had appeared earlier and been taught these unprecedented advanced ideas earlier, the Revolutionary Army would not have been as mediocre as it is now. Mr. Crocodile, what you said makes me feel like I have been doing useless work all these years. I have an unreasonable request, and I hope you will agree to it, Dorag said sincerely. Sure, go ahead. Crocodile nodded. I hope to compile what you said today into a book that can serve as a guide for the Revolutionary Army, and I will sign you as the author. I hope you can agree to it, Dorag said, looking at Crocodile with burning eyes. I don't care about these false reputations. Just do whatever you want, Crocodile said indifferently. Crocodile one-on-one teaching of Dora lasted all night. It wasn't until the next morning that it finally ended. Walking out of the conference room door, Dorag exuded a different look, as if he had been reborn. When the cadres of the Revolutionary Army saw him, they were all amazed, wondering what kind of magical energy Crocodile had injected into their leader. Crocodile, who was sitting in the restaurant, gradually had new and bold ideas after being taught revolutionary ideas that night. After this disastrous defeat, the world government and the Navy have completely entered a period of decline and will gradually lose control of the entire world. After losing the admiral and tens of thousands of elite Navy officers, it would take them a long time to recover. Even a global conscription would be necessary to replenish the lost troops. On Crocodile's side, no one was lost. On Whitebeard's side, apart from some small fry, there is no shortage of high-end combat power. Crocodile's idea is to take this opportunity to gather a large number of troops and directly attack the Holy Land of Marijoa to uproot the Celestial Dragons. However, to implement such a plan, a large amount of money will be needed to massively increase the combat effectiveness of combatants. In Alabasta alone, there are nearly 600,000 royal troops as reserves. All he needs to do is upgrade the officers, and add the high-level combat forces from his side, Whitebeard, and the Revolutionary Army, and it will be more than enough. Dragon, your Revolutionary Army intelligence network is spread all over the world. Have you ever known where the Celestial Dragons store their celestial gold? Crocodile asked Dorag, who was enjoying his meal. Are you planning to take the gold from the sky? Dorag asked in surprise. This idea was simply too bold. He had considered it before, but he immediately rejected it. Danshangjan is the foundation of the Celestial Dragon's rule over the world, so it must have the most stringent defense. Moreover, Marijoa is very close to the Navy headquarters. Once there is any disturbance, the Navy admirals will immediately come to reinforce. It is harder than climbing to the sky to get money out of there. We have indeed obtained information about the storage location of the celestial gold. I wonder if you would like to know, Dorag said hesitantly. Of course, we should use the money of the celestial dragons. Now that Marineford has sunk, the Navy has nowhere to stay and can only choose to rebuild in other branches. Marijoa is empty, lonely and cold right now, Crocodile said as a matter of course. But even so, the Celestial Dragons must have kept many secret and terrifying methods in their base camp. There are huge risks in doing this, Dorag warned cautiously. What are you afraid of? There a saying that goes, fortune and honor are found in danger. Crocodile waved his hand and said disapprovingly. However, in order to complete this plan, I need someone from you. Who? Bear? Dorag looked at the bear hesitantly, looking somewhat reluctant. Drago, Crocodile saved my life, and I promised to help him. But the Revolutionary Army is now very short of high-end combat power. I have finally waited for you. How can I bear to let you go? Dorag said with a sigh. You don't have to worry about your combat power. As long as you can obtain the heavenly gold, I can immediately raise your officers to the level of generals. Crocodile said confidently. What, are you kidding me? Dragon obviously didn't believe what Crocodile said. The general is not a cabbage. You say you can improve him? Wouldn't that mean the streets would be filled with strong men at the level of Navy admirals? I know you don't believe me, so I can demonstrate it to you right now. Crocodile grinned. Sabo, come here. Crocodile waved to Sabo not far away. Me? Sabo asked, pointing at himself in confusion. Yes, come on. Crocodile affirmed. Do you want to become as strong as Iron Fist Garp? Crocodile asked. Of course, becoming a strong man like Mr. Garp has been my childhood dream. Sabo nodded. Also, I never found a chance to thank you. Thank you for saving Ace during the war at the top. He and Luffy are my good brothers, Sabo said and bowed deeply to Crocodile. You will thank me even more next time, Crocodile said. What? Sabo didn't understand what Crocodile meant. Crocodile didn't explain any more and put a hand on Sabo's shoulder. Sabo suddenly felt a surge of heat flowing from Crocodile palm into his body. He felt that his power was undergoing an unprecedented change. Even his body was gradually becoming taller and stronger. In just a dozen breaths, Sabo's entire appearance and temperament changed drastically, and he became a muscular man. But for the Revolutionary Army, who were accustomed to Imkov methods, this was no big deal. If a person becomes stronger, he can be as powerful as a general. That's simply a fantasy. How does it feel? Crocodile asked with a chuckle after removing his hand. Sabo is already a world-class taijutsu expert, so Crocodile doesn't need to worry about this part at all. He raised Sabo's strength, physique, stamina and two-color domineering to the highest level, which immediately produced earth-shaking changes, and Crocodile discovered that this guy had actually awakened his conqueror haki. So I helped him learn the domineering haki entanglement as well. At this moment, Sabo stared at his hands blankly, then turned to look at Crocodile, feeling a little bit unbelievable. I feel really strong now, Sabo said in a deep voice. Dragon, Mr. Crocodile, what I said just now was not a joke. Sabo turned to Dragon and said seriously, I can see that you have become much stronger, but that doesn't mean you can reach the level of an admiral, Doarag said disapprovingly. Come on, let go outside and let you experience it for yourself, Sabo said excitedly. Okay. Drago frowned, wondering if Crocodile had injected some kind of hormone into Sabo. The two men stood in an empty wasteland, surrounded by revolutionary soldiers. The leader versus the chief of staff. This kind of battle is not something you can easily see. In the hearts of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon is like a god of war. They generally believe that Dragon is the strongest man in the world. People like Whitebeard have to stand aside in front of Dragon. Doarag is just too low-key and unwilling to act rashly. I am going to attack. Sabo showed off his signature move, the Dragon Claw hand, and pounced on Dragon first. This kind of power. The moment Dragon was touched by Sabo's attack, his face suddenly changed. He had only felt this kind of power, like the crushing of a mountain, from his father. At this time, every attack from Sabo shocked him. Could it be that what Crocodile said was true? Does he really have the ability to upgrade others to general-level combat power? But if you only have great power, you are far from reaching the level of a general. Your power has become much stronger, but that all? Doarag said in a deep voice. Really? Then I will have to use all my strength, Sabo said with a sneer. When he pounced on Dragon again, Sabo's black dragon claws were already covered with a layer of golden light. In addition to the golden light, there was also faint flashes of black and red thunder. No way he even knows this kind of thing. Seeing this, Doarag's pupils suddenly shrank and he immediately used the same move. After all, he is the true founder of the Dragon Claw hand, and he is definitely the best in the world in the use of domineering power. Boom! When the two dragon claws intersected in the air, an extremely violent hurricane erupted instantly, and the red and black lightning collided wantonly. The clouds above Baltimore in the White Earth Land were directly split apart by the momentum of the two men. A large number of revolutionary soldiers were blown away, and only the strong cadres were able to stand still and watch this shocking scene. Am I dreaming? Sabo is now evenly matched with Dragon. Imkov stared at her huge eyes and eyebrows, totally unable to believe it. It not just you who doesn't believe it. All of us don't dare to believe it, Kurla said foolishly. After this blow, Doarag shouted, that it. Sabo quickly stopped, but the excitement in his eyes could not be concealed no matter what. With a serious look on his face, Drago rushed towards Crocodile, grabbed Crocodile's hand and said, Mr. Crocodile, I am sorry I just doubted you. You possess such godlike power. Why don't you create more top-level combat forces? If the Revolutionary Army had more revolutionary fighters as powerful as Sabo, they would have a greater chance of overthrowing the rule of the Celestial Dragons. Crocodile couldn't help but smile. Do you think it costs nothing to help a person reach this level of strength? I want all my subordinates to have such strength, but now only NLO can achieve it. Could it be that to accomplish this, Sir needs to consume his own lifespan? Arag couldn't help but imagine. It won't cost you your life, but it will cost you a lot of money. Crocodile shook his head. Money, Bailey. Arag's ferocious face was full of confusion.